I'm Andy Crawford with Louisiana Sportsman magazine. Today I am in Venice with my son. We're pitching the canes and the lilies for bass. It's one of my favorite places in the world to fish. It's very unique. You got bass, you got redfish, but I love to come down here and fish the canes. And so I decided to come down and show Garrett how to do this. What we're doing is throwing beaver style baits. This is a Havoc, a Berkeley Havoc. The key to getting into the cover though is this heavy weight. I'm using tungsten, ounce and a half, to be able to really punch through the lilies. We haven't gotten a lot of bites yet. We've still got a little bit of fall, and so I'm hoping that it gets better. But we've caught a few fish. They've all been inside that tangle of those lilies, and so this heavy weight really allows for it to pull it through, and it's pegged. You want a peg in there to keep that weight from moving up and down, so when the weight goes through, it pulls your bait in. All right, so what I really want to talk about is pitching. Ken Sherman with Front to Back Boat Service in Baton Rouge took me under his wing years ago and taught me how to pitch a bait. Ken's one of the best jig fishermen I've ever been in a boat with, and so he really encouraged me and told me the things I was doing wrong. And so I was out here. I take it for granted a little bit. But Garrett hadn't had a whole lot of experience with it, and so I was coaching him on how to get that bait out there without backlash and without getting line twist on the end of the rod tip, all of that stuff. And it occurred to me that there's probably a lot of other people out there who haven't sort of grown up doing it, would like to learn it, young anglers, whatnot. And so what I wanted to do is just sort of go through the basics of the technique. Really, all you're doing is you're working that lure on a pendulum. Okay, that's it. That's all you're doing. And so you're not throwing it out there and doing crazy stuff. You're just working. It's all really sort of in your wrist. And you're just using that rod as a fulcrum, and your bait is the pendulum. And so one of the easiest ways to learn when you start is you pull your bait down to about where your reel is, you trip your bail, and you just let go and let it slide out there. Okay, you just hold it and you just let it slide out there. Notice that I didn't really move my rod a whole lot. Again, it's all momentum of that bait, okay? Once you get that down, you don't even have to touch the bait anymore. You can reel it in and just let that pendulum swing back out. And again, you're not, if you jerk on that rod or just sort of throw the bait out, you're going to get loops and it'll likely wrap you on the rod tip. Okay, now just like when you're holding it like this, notice where I'm holding it, same place as when I'm doing it without. I mean, I like it to be right up around the reel when I pitch it out there. And that's really it. You want a nice stiff rod. This is a heavy action, but you want to have a little bit of a fast tip so that you have some give in it, and it helps you with that swing. I don't like broomsticks. They're just for me, they're too stiff. This is a 6 foot, I think, yeah, actually this is a 7 foot rod. The longer the rod, the easier it is to lay it out there. So you want a good long rod. And then you want to set your reel up to where when you trip that spool, it'll run down pretty freely. The more freely you can handle it, the more distance you're going to get, the easier it is to work that lure. You can play with the tensioner, start a little tighter, and then until you get used to that action. Now, if you notice, I'm using my left hand. I am not left-handed, I'm right-handed, and for years, this hand has been pretty much good for nothing but holding that bait and letting it go out there. Ken Sherman pretty much berated me into learning how to fish with my left hand, how to use my left hand to pitch a lure out there. And the reason's pretty simple. When you pitch a lure out there with your right hand, you have to switch it over, and when you do that, if that bait is falling and the fish picks it up while you're switching over, you can miss that fish really easily. Whereas when I pitch it out with that left hand, it's ready. I'm ready to set the hook as soon as the bait hits the water and get on that fish. Honestly, I didn't learn on a boat. I learned in my front yard. I went and got a rod and stood out in my subdivision and put up with everybody laughing at me and yelling at me, asking if I caught anything, and used a bucket and just sat there or stood there and just pitched and pitched and pitched until I had the basics down. And over time, you learn more. It's just like anything. You learn more, you get better at it. And so that's a good way to do it without getting too embarrassed on the boat. It's just like any other cast. Your thumb is controlling that spool, and so just don't let that get away from you. So I hope it helps. It's a great way to catch bass. It's a fun way to catch bass because there's it's always fun setting the hook on a fish. But when you set the hook on a fish and that kind of stuff, and then you have to get him out of there real fast, it's a lot of fun. A lot of times it's hard to detect the bite because of the cover, but when you key in on it, man, it is a blast, and there's no better place to do it than Venice, Louisiana. So I hope this helps. See you on the web.